Yo.
Welcome back to BeRad The Podcast with Carson and Kat.
BeRad The Podcast. Let's go.
Oh, Carson froze.
Oh, it's okay.
Oh, it's okay. Okay, good.
Yeah.
We're doing our very first virtual podcast.
Yeah, and we're two virtually challenged monkeys.
I know. I mean, I'm pretty tech challenged. You're usually pretty good, but...
It's just because I put maximum effort, but I'm still not... I don't have a knack.
I know. You have a knack compared to me, but I do give up halfway.
Yeah, I keep beating my head against the wall until something moves, but yeah.
Well, what have you been up to? You're in Texas.
Yeah, I'm here in Austin, Texas, and I've been working on this home renovation project, and this is an old 1970s style A-frame house that is next to Lake Travis. However, Lake Travis is low right now because...
So there's no water.
Yeah, it's not currently waterfront. When the lake is full, it's waterfront, and it's actually a really amazing spot. And it's a big property, really cool house. It's a really old house. But that being said, like, there's been a lot of issues with it over the years. So I'm fixing a lot of those up and getting it ready to rent out. So it's been a fun project. It's been a lot of different things that I've had to deal with and fix.
Yeah, I know. Every day is a new problem for you. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah. I mean, this house has had, I think the community kind of like built it without really adhering to code back in the 70s.
Wasn't it an old KOA campground? Was it built for that?
Allegedly. I mean, I've heard different stories. I think it might have been used for that for a little while. But it's this huge, A-frame, and there's this north-facing wall that basically has had a lot of leak points in it, so it's been taking on water whenever there's a big rainstorm. And here in Texas, there's some huge rainstorms with giant lightning, thunder. It's actually really beautiful because this north-facing wall has these big picture windows. You can watch these lightning storms roll through, and it's really, really epic. But that being said, sometimes there's a little bit of a north wind with those, and it will blast the wall with water. So over the years, it's taken on a lot of water damage, and actually the structural integrity of that wall was starting to get questionable. Not to mention that there was a little bit of mold and stuff growing in there. So
some dead animals in the walls.
Yeah, so there's also intrusion points in the sides of the eaves and stuff, and over the years those have gotten patched, but still not 100%. So I've been definitely discovering a lot of different animal skeletons and uncovering families of mice that maybe lived and died in the walls, and
and skunks. You listed for me all the dead animal species you found in the wall. So mice, obviously.
Yeah.
Meerkats.
A ringtail
skunks.
cat. A ringtail cat was in the ceiling, and it died in there, and that was pretty intense to see because
yeah.
It's like that one was pretty much fully decomposed. And then two skunks got like stuck in the attic. I think that was their home, and then eventually the eaves got sealed up, and then I don't know if they died up there before the eaves got sealed up, but anyways, they didn't leave and they died up there in the attic, and they died kind of like right next to each other, like holding each other. And the only reason I could tell they were skunks is because I could see the color of their tails. But it was like a tragic love story, like Romeo and Juliet, discovering them up there. So
that's so horrific.
And then like so many mud dauber, wasp nests, and a bunch of other fun activity that's been happening up there. So it's been a huge job just to like clean it out. And then on top of that, it's a really old house with some funny plumbing. It's we're updating some certain parts of the plumbing, the electricity, this leaky front wall, just getting everything up to date. So it's been a huge project.
Yeah, it's like when I always think of like this situation with pipes, not literal pipes, figurative pipes, and like one leak springs, and then you like duct tape that leak, and as soon as that leak is sprung or is duct tape like something else, that's how this project feels for you.
Exactly. Yeah. Looking behind each door, you discover an entirely new world of problems. So.
Well, good job.
Thanks.
While you're doing that, I'm here in Flagstaff.
Flagstaff, Arizona. Yeah, that sounds
I feel like
epic.
each day when we chat, I'm like, you're like, I had to deal with this. And I'm like, well, I got to run in the Grand Canyon today.
Oh, that's so epic. Yeah.
I know. It's been pretty awesome.
This is a great contrast of experience between you and me right now.
I know.
But,
I'm here for a training camp. I've been here for 2 weeks. I have run a total of 20 or more hours in the canyon in the last 2 weeks, probably closer to 25 hours in the canyon in the past 2 weeks, which has been, it's kind of like felt like coming home. I've spent a lot of time running in the canyon, and it's just been the best. And I did like early in my career, and so it feels, and I hadn't been there for a long time, so it feels really good to, it feels kind of crazy reflecting on all that time, but with a new mature mindset.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing.
So instead of just like flinging myself down. Go ahead.
What have been some of your most fun experiences there in Arizona and in the Grand Canyon while you're running?
Yeah, definitely the Grand Canyon runs, all of which I've done solo. Not a lot of people are doing 5-hour runs right now. So, I've done them solo, which I'm actually grateful for. It's pretty meditative being down there, and a lot of good time for reflection. Also a lot of good time of just like kind of pushing myself solo and sectioning out the runs and really focusing on nutrition, which getting 90 grams of carbs an hour, it's like a lot of mental energy to eat that much. And then other than that, pretty much running every day with somebody new and with friends that I've made over the years. So I'm staying with my friends, Cam and Tasha Harder. Cam Harder is my PT. So it's been really fun staying with him, and he gets to oversee all my my strength workouts and tell me what I'm doing wrong, which like I love. And then I've gotten to run with Abby Hall, who is a longtime friend and training partner, Lucy Bartholomew, who's visiting, Jess Brazou, Jeff Browning. I've done a lot of miles with Cam. So it's every day it's somebody new, and I'm like, man, I've done more miles here with other people than I have by myself, which is, I don't get to do that at home. I have one training partner at home.
Yeah, you're having a BeRad social hour out there. You're getting to run with so many cool people. That's awesome.
And it's so cool because like it's freaking pushing me. Cam and I did a workout last week. It was probably the hardest workout I've done in 5 years, probably since working out with Claire and Abby back in Boulder, like in 2017, 2018. And, fully lactic. It started with a 20-minute tempo, and we went out at like 5:30 pace, and I was like, uh-oh. And I was lactic immediately, and he continued to drop me like a bad habit. It's just, and it's also something that we were talking about yesterday, is that it's just training in Hawaii solo so often. And even when I'm training, I have one, shout out Eric, he's my training partner. He definitely does a good job pushing me, but he doesn't compete on the world stage, and training with some of these women who are the best in the world and being able to hang. has given me more confidence than I would have gotten just putting in a solid training block at home. So that has been really, really cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, perks of having a super burly PT that you get to stay with too. That's awesome.
I know, super
Be able to
fit, burly
push
PT.
you, and like some amazing athletes up in Flagstaff. And from what you've told me, it sounds like the perfect place to train because it's up at 7,000-foot elevation, which is high enough to adapt and become super efficient with how you use oxygen, but like not so high that you can't recover afterwards. Like it's just high enough that you get maximum gains with still being able to recover.
Yeah, I think any higher than this, like I lived at 8,500 feet for a couple years and I felt like I never was recovering. And I also felt just slow. But this is high enough where I can still like run fast paces. I'm actually like faster paces than in humidity actually. At home and run fast paces, but still recover from them. Where like at 8,500 feet, I felt every single run was slow and I felt like I wasn't recovering from them. So it is like, yeah, it's the perfect elevation. Plus there's the canyon right there. Plus like I can drop down to Sedona. So when I ran with Lucy and Abby and Jess one day, we dropped down to Sedona, which was like, 5,000 feet. And that's pretty significant. And we did like a run up Mount Wilson, which was super fun, and which is like 2,500 feet. So like the climb you do get to back to 7,000. But yeah, there's everything. If I really needed to do like a fast workout, I could drop all the way down to Phoenix, which I know Abby Hall does sometimes. So yeah, it's the best. I mean, there's not a lot of water here, which is kind of tough. But I did get to jump in a river, which was really fun.
Which river?
When I was in, I don't know what it was. I sent you a video of it, but I was running with this guy named Dylan Harris, who he's the person who filmed, I think it's called The Chase. It's the film about the Cocodona 250 with a bunch of really great athletes in it. And he and I are working on a film project together for next fall. And so this was our first time meeting in person. And we went on like a 12-mile run. And he was on the struggle bus a little bit. He's been on the film tour. And then, we got him in the creek halfway. But it was like this beautiful, it wasn't technically an Oak Creek, so maybe it was like the Oak Creek, but it was really fun and super, super beautiful. So there is some water.
Yeah, I'm scoping out all the rivers out there to see, if I can join you next time. If this Texas project is hopefully finished by then, I'll be able to come out and do some running, do some whitewater kayaking, and hang out with you while we're both in Arizona. And like
I know,
experiencing the Grand Canyon, which I mean, I've only ever seen it from the river itself. I've never seen it from the rim, the very top, which is like, I hear that that's a really epic viewpoint. So I really am excited to go see that.
Yeah, I feel like when you're in the canyon, it's beautiful, but it's really hard to grasp just how massive it is unless you're on the rim.
Yeah.
Looking over, because when you're in the canyon, you can't even see the top. You can think you see the top. I remember when Jim Walmsley was pacing me for my Grand Canyon FKT and we were about to go up South Kaibab, he actually had just done Diagonal de Fou 100, so he was going to stay there and let me go up. But he was like, don't, and I was like, where's the top? Can you see it? And he was like, never look for the top. You can't see it from here. You can see it when you have a mile to go. And it's true. It's just like layers and layers and layers of canyon. And it's so amazing. I was talking to Jess Brazou, Jim's wife, and I was, when we were running, and I told her like, oh yeah, every time I go like see the canyon, I get butterflies. It kind of reminds me of how when you were a kid and you were like driving down the road to go to the North Shore, you would get butterflies on your way to go surf those. Like I get that same feeling. And she's like, I get a feeling of foreboding because it is so big And it is like, once you're down there, and you have no choice but to hike your ass up. And it was kind of cool watching everybody. Like, I was in the middle of these like hard, long training runs, but I was going through the same thing as somebody who maybe, was challenging themselves to go hike, rim to river or rim to Skeleton Point and on their way back up. And like that, they probably trained for that because it's a big hike. And we were all doing the same thing. And it was super cool to like collectively be struggling in a place that is really, really beautiful. Everybody who's hiking up that hill, no matter how fast you're going, everybody is struggling because it's hard. So it's a cool collective feeling of everybody here is challenging themselves, and we're choosing to disconnect because there's no service down there. And and there's like, for everybody out there, like I saw one lady crying because she was just, it was hard. And I was like, I talked to her for a minute, and I was like, I've been there, like we're almost to the top. She was about a mile from the top, which a mile might as well be 10 when you're gaining 1,000 feet in a mile,
Yeah,
you
that's
don't
a lot.
usually hike. And then the other cool thing I was telling you about, I saw this group of people carrying somebody who, a paraplegic guy in a chair. And there was this big group of people. They had 2 handlebars in front and 2 in the back, and like all wearing matching shirts, carrying this guy down to Indian Gardens, which is, halfway down Bright Angel. And it's just like a bunch of, everybody out there is on their own journey. And how special is that collective energy
so cool.
is electric.
And I mean, that place itself has a lot of energy. Like, in Hawaii they call it the mana, like that the place has, but it's got such powerful energy. And when I was in there, I mean, I had like it was pretty palpable, like the feeling of like dropping into the Grand Canyon to kayak it, and the first time I'd ever been there in person. And it was, it is powerful, and it's kind of like nerve-wracking because it's so powerful and it's such a big ancient feature. There's so many things about the Grand that just make it like definitely one of the wonders of the world. So I guess this is like a great this is a great advertisement for the Grand Canyon. Like, if you haven't gone and check it out yet, definitely go look at it, because it's like you have to at some point in your life to go look at that and be there and feel it, because it's something else.
I really want to do rim to rim to rim with you, or at least rim to rim, by the end of this year. Maybe we could do rim to rim and just shuttle back like in the fall. I think that would be really special.
That'd be cool. Yeah, I'm like mildly training for the Speed Goat 28K that I convinced my buddy Marty to sign up for too. So we're both going to survive that, and then figure out where to go from there. But
yeah, well, you're going on rim to rim or rim to rim to rim. It's a perfect lineup. It's Speed Goat 28K has about 6,000 feet of vert, which is about what rim to rim to rim has, or rim to rim has, 6,000 feet. The full is like about 12.
So it's basically Speed Goat times 2.
Yeah. It's basically Speed Goat times 2.
Sick. That sounds pretty fun, actually.
But in the canyon. So, and then you'll be going to Chamonix while I'm running CCC, you'll have time to train there. So you can do some big vert while I'm tapering.
Yeah, CCC. That's such an epic race too.
I know.
Well,
should we move on? Oh, one thing I wanted to say about training before we move on. Just something that I had this like epiphany while I was here, and I coach a bunch of athletes, and it's sometimes one of those things where it's really hard to be objective about my own training. And so I was looking back on this training block, and I was like, oh, it's been, for those of you who don't know, I'm racing next week at the Madeira Island Ultra Trail. And I was looking back on this training block, and I was like, it's been a near perfect training block. And then I thought to myself, like, well, what would have made it perfect? And I was like, well, you know, I changed some stuff around when I was really tired. You know, as for example, after that hard workout that I did with Cam, I was supposed to have a 5-hour run the next day, and I just felt like obliterated. So I moved it. And like, because of that, I got just like a tiny bit less volume that week. And I was thinking to myself, and I was like, well, what if I had just gone through that? Would that have made it a perfect training block? And I was like, no, because I likely would have dug myself a hole. And so this, you know, rant and this reflection is basically to say, like, a perfect training block is you listening to your body and you being able to acknowledge when you need to pull back. And I think there's a lot of power in that. One of the great coaches in running and specifically triathlon, Matt Fitzgerald, he coached me for a little bit, and he said, he told me once that I'll never forget, and I tell athletes all the time, that the power is in restraint. And that is what separates good athletes and great athletes, is the people who are willing and knowing, are mature enough to recognize, like, this doesn't feel productive today, and have the confidence to change it around and to draw confidence from that. So, like, you know, while I think there's no such thing as a perfect training block, I think, you know, this was as close as it got. And I think a huge part of that was changing things around. I came here to Flag to train, and twice within that training block, I had to move big runs because I wasn't feeling it and it didn't feel right. So yeah, I just wanted to touch on that. And,
that's so good. I mean, listening to your body, it's like crucial. Yeah, and I know that you were kind of like monologuing there, but I wanted to check in and just like, I wanted to mention that, you know, it's really common that you see people glorifying being able to push through whatever bad feeling they might be feeling to like make the gains and like be badass or whatever. But at the end of the day, the goal is to maximize the gains you get from your training. And if you're like running yourself ragged, you're not going to necessarily adapt to those fitness efforts that you might put forward.
Yeah, you won't optimize those fitness gains. And I think, you know, there is a time and a place to just push, but there's also a time and a place where you're like, where you shouldn't. And it takes time and confidence in yourself and trusting your coach to recognize those times and to differentiate. But, you know, I think it's super important and it takes practice too, but I think it's important to, you know, be honest with yourself. And we talk about all the time, like, our gut knows whether or not you're wimping out or you're being smart. And, yeah, and it takes time to like listen to that and figure out what that is. But yeah, I just wanted to touch on that a little bit because that was a pretty important, and I think I've had this realization a couple times, but I think it was an important realization for this training block that I'm going to draw confidence in when I go into race next week.
Yeah, your gut knows. I love that. My gut knew yesterday when I had eaten like way too many food truck tacos last week. I had a realization. I was like, I gotta tone it down a little bit. I'm running myself ragged on these food truck tacos, and they're great. They're so tasty, but you know, I've realized they're so convenient and cheap. But like, you know, that's probably part of the reason why I was making my tummy feel like, all right, buddy, like, slow it down.
Not just your tummy, but like your whole body was inflamed. You're like,
yeah,
my back hurts.
I know, my face is like a little bit swollen. Yeah. So I went to the health food store last night and had a huge salad with some healthy fish and stuff. So
yeah, cleansing.
You know, yeah. Kat is training for ultra marathons. I'm training for taco eating ultras.
Yeah, I think you want it. There's not a lot of tacos in Portugal, I don't think so. Maybe you should be eating more cheese. But anyway, so today we're going to interview you This has been requested every time I like do an Instagram shout out, like, hey, what should we talk about in the podcast? Everybody wants to interview you. And I was writing these questions down yesterday, and I was realizing, like, I think you're the more interesting out of the two of us. So
Yeah, right.
I'm glad that we're going to get to talk about you. No, seriously, I think people will agree.
Yeah, right. All right. Well, I'm glad to tell everyone about myself and
Cool.
about me. That's so fun.
Yeah, and we're gonna do that, and then we got a couple listener questions. I just chose 3 today, and then we'll wrap up. But so, Carson Magoon, are you ready to be interviewed?
Oh boy, I hope so. Yeah.
Starts with a doozy.
A doozy. Okay. Wow. Well,
Yeah.
buckle up. Here we go.
Buckle
I'm
up.
ready.
All right, so both of us were born and raised in Hawaii, but you actually have ties to Hawaii. Mine, you have blood ties to Hawaii, and your Hawaiian history, every time you or your dad, Keoki, tells me about where you've come from and your connection, your ancestral connection to Hawaii and Waimea specifically, where we grew up, I'm just blown away. One of the questions I get, because we've mentioned it a couple times, or what are those ties to Hawaii and to Waimea specifically?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's one of my it's something I'm really I hold dear to my heart, is like my ties to Hawaii and my family ties there, my family history there. And it's something that my dad actually uncovered a lot of throughout my life. His side of the family, they didn't always celebrate Hawaiian culture, and or like their ties to ancient Hawaii and ancient Hawaiians, because as Hawaii was taken over by the United States, it wasn't something that was celebrated by that Western culture, and for a while Hawaiians weren't allowed legally to have a Hawaiian first name. They had to go with, instead of, they would have to choose an English first name, so they would actually have to change that part of them. And there was a big push by the Westerners to kind of like convert Hawaiians over to the Catholic Church, and basically like make sure that they would I forget the word that I'm looking for, a specific word, but like basically take them into that culture. So
Conversion. I'm thinking of the word too. I can't remember it.
oh man, that's the worst. But anyway, so when like learning all this stuff as a kid, it was kind of mind blowing, and my dad really spearheaded a lot of that research, along with my uncle, and they would always share notes together and learn about our family history. But Waimea is where Kat and I met at the high school that we went to, and I went to that school since kindergarten, and Kat started going there in like 8th grade, I think. So Waimea is a really amazing place. It's definitely like where I was raised, and where it's a place I've spent the most time in my life. So it's really special to me. And Waimea specifically, how like my family has ancestral ties there because, well, originally like my great, I don't know, 4, maybe 5 generations back, I'm like a direct descendant of this man named Kaha Huha. And he was part of King Kamehameha's upbringing when King Kamehameha was like the king that was born in secrecy, because they were actually they were basically offing babies during that time because of this story being told that a all powerful king will rise during this time, and so all of the kings and queens in power were afraid of this king to be. So as King Kamehameha was born, he was snuck away over to some valleys up on the north side of the Big Island. And my relative, Huha, he was instrumental in helping to hide Kamehameha during those early days. And then after King Kamehameha started fulfilling the prophecy, and there's a whole bunch of different parts of this prophecy that he was able to complete. And I definitely recommend, reading a book about King Kamehameha, because it's one of the most amazing stories in recent history of a person stepping into their power and fulfilling prophecy. It's and this was back in the 1700s, so not that long ago. Anyways, as Kamehameha was prophesized, he was going to unite the Hawaiian Islands and basically conquer all of the Hawaiian Islands, to unite them and bring all that power together and consolidate that power. So Kaha was instrumental in helping him create a powerful naval fleet, basically like a canoe fleet. He was a canoe shaper. And also, helped to develop his army in order to go and conquer Maui and Oahu and all the other islands. So, Huha's daughter, Ahia, married a man, Captain George Beckley Jr., who was one of the first Westerners to arrive in one of those big old ships with the giant sails that you can imagine, like the kind you see in I don't know, like a pirate movie or something. Imagine one of those ships. So that was so Captain George Beckley Jr. and Ahia fell in love, and he was a Westerner. So because she was royalty and she was a chiefess, he was granted royal status, ali'i status, in order to be with her. Otherwise, he would have had to, bow down and basically be below her level every time that they were in the same room together. That was one of the kapus of ancient Hawaii. So in order for him to become part of the family, they had to grant, Huha had to grant and get Kamehameha to grant him ali'i status. And part of the fine print of that was that they had to give up their first three children that they had together, which was hefty.
So crazy.
It's a heavy price to pay, yeah. And back then they had large families, so it was kind of expected that they would have more than 3 kids. Anyways, over the years, King Kamehameha was gifted cattle, and he didn't really know how to manage them. They kind of ran wild all over the Big Island, the island of Hawaiʻi. So these cattle grew to 2 separate herds of about 10,000 head of cattle each, which is a huge herd of cattle. I mean, it's difficult to maintain, to manage 15 cattle, given what my family does.
From experience.
Yeah, they break fences. You have to deal with them, and they're such fun animals. But when you get a ton of cattle like that, it can be devastating, and they can destroy things. So they were actually destroying, towns and kind of running amok, so to say. So Kamehameha tasked George Beckley Jr. with the task of going and figuring out how to manage all these cattle that were causing destruction. So Captain George Beckley Jr. and Ahia, they as a married couple, went to Mexico, and that's where they found the vaqueros, and were able to find the original cowboys and learn how to be a cowboy, basically, which is a pretty cool. It's a pretty cool thing, that they were able to actually find these Mexican cowboys and bring them back to Hawaii in order to show the Hawaiian people how to like manage all these cattle. So that the Hawaiian cowboy is called the Paniolo, and so the Paniolo really descended from that, and the vaqueros, the Mexican cowboys that came over. And straight to Waimea, that's kind of like the birthplace of the Paniolo. And so over the years, Paniolos have been some of the best cowboys in the world. And actually, they go off to win some really big rodeos. And, rodeos, especially like in a lot of these southern states, are really competitive. There's money on the line, there's glory on the line, there's a lot of money in like the quality of your animals. So, Hawaiians became some of the best cowboys, some of the best ropers, and some of the best, horse trainers, all of those things. And they had a knack for it. So Ahia was, after having, I forget how many kids, I think she had something like 8 kids. After she had this big family with George Beckley Jr., one of their daughters was, she ended up marrying a Chinese merchant also, who like would come back and forth to Hawaii from China and actually, sell a bunch of different stuff. And so he was kind of a big deal in the merchant arena. So,
Yeah.
that's kind of funny. He was kind of a player too, from what I heard. He had like he had a family in China and a family in Hawaii, and he was kind of rich. So I think he was like, somebody told me that he was the first Chinese millionaire in Hawaii, which was kind of a fun. That's like a fun little
Fun
tidbit.
fact.
Yeah.
Another one is he brought the first or some of the first banyan trees to Hawaii, didn't he?
Yeah, exactly. And the first banyan trees that were in Honolulu, right underneath or right above the restaurant, the Hungry Lion. So the first 2 banyan trees were yin and yang, and they were kind of historical trees. One of them got sick and they had to cut it down. So my dad actually went there and retrieved a bunch of the wood off of that tree. It's like historic banyan tree wood. So pretty
That's
cool.
so cool.
But
Yeah.
yeah, so
Awesome.
that's like kind of the immediate ties to Hawaii that I have, and over the years, like my family's been there. They've been a part of a whole bunch of different stuff. The Magoon family's
Yeah.
kind of spread out. But what were you about to say?
Pretty amazing. I was just gonna say, like, you and your dad recorded a podcast, a Mo'olelo, about his family history. It would be so cool to. I'm so glad that you guys did that. So whether it's probably won't be published, but just like for us and our family to listen to.
Yeah, totally. And he's got so many great stories. And
Yeah.
yeah, ancient Hawaii was such a wild time because it's kind of a melting pot. Yeah, you have cultures from all over Asia. You have the Westerners, you have the Hawaiians, the native Hawaiians, and like, everyone kind of congregated on this isolated landmass in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, which is, it's really conducive for trade. It's like one of the most prime military outposts in the world because of its location, which is part of the reason why the U.S. was so intent on controlling it.
Yeah.
And if it wasn't the U.S. controlling it, like a lot of people think that it would have been Japan that would have tried to control it.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people that still think that like Native Hawaiians should control it. So there's a lot of political belief there that it's hard to really say what would have happened if the U.S. didn't control Hawaii.
Yeah. And Yeah, that's a super complex issue that, like, that we don't have to get into now. But at one point, maybe it would be interesting to have somebody on to talk about it. But yeah, so something that really has stood out to me about this story, I mean, I guess two different aspects, is that Huha was a canoe shaper, and that your ties to canoes in your family is run super deep because of that. You know, something that we all do as a family is go canoe surfing. And you know, when right before we got married, the Christmas before, your dad gifted me with my own canoe paddle, and it seemed, you know, like a welcoming me into the family type of presentation, you know. And how has your Hawaiian ties and your ties to Huha specifically, has that shaped your relationship with water at all, especially since your dad has been such a big part of that relationship, and he holds these blood ties so highly?
Yeah, we definitely hold those in high regard, and you know, I do think that my family's history and how we're like so connected to the ocean, it it all plays a big part in like who I am. From surfing to you know, sailing canoes and paddling canoes and being out in the ocean and diving and going fishing and stuff. I think it all you know, it all stems from like a way of life, and you know, from the Hawaiian culture. Hawaiians have historically been some of the best water people in the world. I mean, think of a civilization that traveled from the South Pacific over 1,000 miles away to find Hawaii in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. It's the most isolated landmass on Earth. And
Yeah.
they knew before leaving that they were going to find something. They were going to find a paradise there. And 1,000 miles over the ocean, across like over the equator and everything. It's like it's you can like correlate that to like, you know, you can relate that to space travel in the 70s, you know, when they were trying to make it to the moon. It's like it's a pretty unreal like objective to be able to find this piece of land that has been essentially prophesized. And for Hawaiians to read the currents, read the stars, read the wind, and all the signs that Mother Nature is sending them to tell them whether they're going in the right direction or not. And I really truly believe that it was a spiritual, it was like a divine intuition that the ancient Hawaiians had to be able to find Hawaii in the first place.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Kaha is like a big deal with you know, the canoe history in my family, and I think that played a big part. Oh, you asked like, you know, if that was
Tied
like
in with your relationship with water. And
Yeah.
like, I think your relationship with water has stemmed from like a couple places, but just the way that I see you and your family is specifically around canoes. It's like a reverence that is pretty amazing. Even though it's like a fun toy and canoe surfing is one of my favorite things to do with you guys, it's still like
Yeah.
treated with, you know, such respect in so many different ways.
Yeah, you know, it's canoes are a really special vehicle, and like we can go as deep into like the into like the spiritual component of canoes as you like. You know, paddling canoes is one of the most amazing ways to get around, in my opinion, and they're a really special piece of technology that has allowed Hawaiians to travel in ways that no other civilization could at that time. So, and you know, they're light. You can bring them up on the beach. You can go over pretty shallow spaces with them. You can ride waves. You can catch the wind. You can surf them. They're really nimble. You can even paddle them. And back in the day, back in ancient Hawaii, canoes were such a big deal. People would do canoe races, and Hawaiians were so crazy. Some of these guys would they would do these canoe races and bet huge bets. They would actually sometimes they would bet their lives. So like the winners would live and the losers would not. And those are some like historic races. But they would be used for subsistence. They would be used for travel. Canoes are like a really amazing vehicle. And actually, the canoe that you and I get to use often is a copy of a canoe that my great great grandmother had made with one of the original canoe shapers in Kona. This man named Old Man Yama, and he was a really cool sounding guy. I never met him, obviously, but he was an amazing canoe shaper who made a lot of these opelu canoes. And opelu canoes are, what they'd use to go and catch opelu and go fishing. So they're known as a fishing canoe. It's like, the type of canoe that is. And so my grandmother had one of these canoes made out of an old koa log that was selected off of the mountain. And so we actually made some copies of that, and that's what you and I get to go surfing on.
Yeah, and you guys still have that canoe, right? The koa canoe at Keapu?
Perhaps. Yeah, we do.
Okay. Never mind. What canoe?
Yeah, my family, that's like one of the most important things in my family's legacy. So, we hold that with very carefully and in very high regard. And so, that's one reason why we can never take that one in the water because it's like so special. So, and over the years, it's like my family's basically treated that as like their most important possession.
Yeah, I mean, for good reason.
Yeah.
Cool. So speaking of Kona and cows, something that just really amazed me, and it's so funny because I don't think I really understood the depth of this when I was in high school, of how you guys worked with animals and your ranching, asterisks.
Ranching. What's that mean?
Well, I just mean that you guys don't call it ranching because you don't use horses, so you call yourselves hillbillies, which I think is
we call it
best.
we call it ranching too.
Okay.
Yeah, but you coined the term Kona hillbilly and that kind of stuff.
I coined it? No, you coined it. I just
it.
latched onto it. You coined it. I just was like, that is hilarious. So the thing is, Carson, who made this term up, said that he was a Kona hillbilly because they didn't use horses and ranchers use horses. They do have a horse named Citrusina, but she thinks she's a cow.
Citrusina is kind of crazy.
But anyway, my point is, like, as we started dating as adults, and you'd be like, we were on the Big Island, be like, okay, I got to go like work with the animals, and then I'd come back to hear what you did, and you'd like castrate like some cows that day, and you'd been doing that since you were a kid, and that type of stuff is just so different from my upbringing. And I just kind of want to hear, I don't quite know what this question is, but anytime I tell somebody about this, they're like, what? That's crazy. So tell me a little bit about that upbringing. And I think maybe this question, I'll shape it as I talk, is that like, you talk about how you want our kids to work with the land like that. And you guys, on weekends, building fences or doing, mowing, using a tractor. And, so to talk a little bit about that and what you learned from that growing up and how it's translated into your life now.
Yeah. I mean, that's working in the land is super valuable. And, in life, I think that nothing teaches you honesty and truth like Mother Nature does. It's like if you're gonna go out in the ocean and you're like, oh yeah, I'm a really good surfer, I'm a really good waterman, and you're not, and you go out there and you try to fake it, like the ocean will humble you immediately, and the consequences can be life or death. And working outside and in nature, it's like nature moves at a different pace than humans, and it moves slower, as far as like how plants grow, how animals act. Sometimes animals act quickly, obviously, but like, you have to really you have to really care for these animals and nature, thinking long term. It's not like, humans, I feel like, get so caught up in working week to week, month to month, or like quarter to quarter. Like, oh man, like the business isn't doing good this quarter. The business is doing not doing good, or we're thriving this quarter. We've like made X great earnings or whatever. You know, nature is like a much different thing, and I always I think that like nature is much more knowledgeable than humans ever often realize. So what I think is it's really valuable to like teach little ones that the value of nature and how to get their hands dirty, and how to do work, like honest work in the field, how to like, the fact that pounding a fence post into the ground is sometimes very difficult, and just so that you can contain your cows, just so that you can raise them properly, just so that like they don't overpopulate the space that you have, and or like weeding around your trees or planting trees, and then not only planting trees, but you have to water them, and maybe you have to fertilize them. You have to make sure that if you're going to try it, after so many years of this tree growing, that when it starts fruiting, like you can actually create the optimum conditions so that you can harvest fruit from that tree. It's all like a very intentional process that can take a really long time. And so it can teach you patience and the art of hard work, and the truth behind hard work, which is like, it's really hard to find in today's society. Like, given the age of technology and information, it's like everything moves so fast, and there's kids that are like way younger than me becoming richer than I might ever be in the blink of an eye, and which is, power to them. Like that's great, but like at the end of the day, I think it's really valuable to have like a basis in the natural world, because nature will be here long after humans, and I think that that's something really valuable to try to tap into.
Yeah. As you were talking about that and comparing just like the fast world, especially as like we lean into AI, and who knows what our future Keiki will grow up with. But like, I'm thinking of just like the simplicity, and yet how hard it is of just building a fence, and that is like a quiet that we don't get. And like your family's land in Kona, like that's a place that like people don't get to, or just not just the place, but the challenges, the simple yet complex challenges of working with that land is like an opportunity to quiet your mind in a way that you don't get anywhere. Like I haven't experienced anything like that here since I've been on the mainland, I would maybe if I lived on a ranch here, but it is just a total contrast to the way we live life now. And I think that'll be something that will be rare, and as we raise kids will be a gift to be like, okay, figure out how to build this fence, which is kind of what you and your brother had to do. Like, figure it out.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong, it's like really hard. And even as,
Yeah.
especially as a kid, and you know, you have to like go slow and do this like really difficult work that, you know, doesn't seem to have like an immediate payoff. It's like very slow and tedious. And sometimes like you do it wrong and you have to do it over again. You know, you have to redo it and it's like, oh man, it's excruciating, but like that, and so it's not fun necessarily. Like sometimes it's really brutal and difficult,
Yeah.
especially when like, you know, you have to work with your family day in and day out sometimes, and like, you know, it's so easy to squabble with your family because you're like emotionally comfortable with them. If you're pissy about something, it's easy to be like, ah, well, this is your fault. Like, I'm mad at you for this reason, blah, blah, blah. And really what you're feeling is within yourself. So, you know, that being said, it's, it is like a great teacher in patience.
Yeah. Well, and then the crazy thing is like, it's not just the patience of making the fence, it's the patience of constant upkeep of the fence, you know?
Yeah.
And I think it's like a good lesson. Just, you know, I love when people, and something that I try and pull in is just like be mindful and appreciative of like the little tasks, like doing dishes or making the coffee in the morning, and like building and maintaining a fence is like something on a whole different level. It's like, you know, what is the point of pushing the rock up the hill? And the point is just to like be present in that and the challenge, and like that is a fence post. Am I making sense?
No, yeah, like it's so funny. As a kid, like I never thought of fence building in this like
Deeply.
this like
You were just like-
profoundly of terms. It's in the moment
Yeah,
I'm just
well-
like, God dang it! Hey, like, why do I have to dig these holes and move these rocks and like? But
Yeah. But now you find as an adult, like you like it way more than, and you find more meaning in it than working on your computer, you know?
yeah, yeah. I mean, it is fascinating. Like the whole economy, which you know, when I'm alone, I like study economics a lot, and I'm like, you know, this whole economy is a game, really. I mean, it's like it's a human synthesized game to keep society functioning and moving forward, and you know, for better or worse, like we're doing that. And ancient Hawaii, they had a completely different strategy. You know, it was more like kings and queens that were managing and ruling sections of land where the commoners would work and provide food and resources, and everyone would pool that together. It was like a little more like you know, like almost like communism. But you know, that being said, it wasn't all easy and like fair necessarily. Like I don't think that like the average commoner back then didn't necessarily have like ultimate freedom to do what they wanted, but their position in society was very important. You know,
And it was valued, wasn't it? I
Yeah.
mean, that's something that we were talking about with my sister, right? But continue.
yeah. No, what were we talking about with your sister that you
Just
that's popped into
and
your
my
mind?
sister, for context, is doing her thesis on how ancient Hawaiians managed land, and she was telling me about how the commoners, I forget the Hawaiian name, like that's just the translation is commoner, but instead, because ancient Hawaiians like understood the importance of the entire ecosystem of a community, they, even though the commoners, that, you know, they weren't royal, their position was still like highly valued because it was super important, and that was recognized.
Yeah, I mean, it's crucial that like every person plays their part.
Yeah.
And like valued is you know, that's I guess that's one way to say it. And another way to say it is that the kapu system basically like insured their death if they did not comply. You catch a fish out of season, you will die. Like unless if you escape to, they have these special camps where like you could like escape with your life, and if you were able to make it there before they caught you, you could you
were pardoned, weren't you?
You could survive. Yeah, you would be pardoned. And there's a special, there's these special times a year where they would like pardon people that had committed crimes, and so then they anyways, it's kind of that's a cool way to say it, but like each way, each step, or each brick in the foundation was important. Where was I going with this? I was kind of talking about how
we got it from fence posts though.
Yeah, so but I do think that like working in nature and being close to nature it's so grounding, it's so good for you. I mean, they're coming out with scientific evidence about how like just grounding in nature can reduce stress levels and increase your health and happiness almost immediately. So like, if you're ever feeling kind of like stuck or like or like you're having some sort of major mental block or you're sad, like I always find like going into nature and sitting down, meditating, walking around in nature, if you can find a tree or a river or like a stream or a creek, and like you're able to try to be a part of it, like it's really a great way to ground yourself and feel better.
Yeah. I have this thing that whenever you're feeling rough or you come back and you're sad or something happened at work or maybe you just woke up on the wrong side of the bed, I'm like, go jump in some water somewhere. And that seems to do the trick for you.
Yeah. And it's crazy because humans are mostly water, right? We're like 60 to 70% water. And water is a really amazing molecule. Like it's the most crucial element that provides us life on Earth. And it's magnetic. It's an electromagnetic molecule, and water actually like will grab onto other water molecules. That's why when you look at your car windshield and like all the water like beads up when it's raining, and it won't actually flow down the windshield until enough water molecules have beaded up for the gravity to like pull it down the windshield. Yeah. So water likes to stick together, right? And given that we're water, if we're able to like submerge into a body of water and become part of that, it's like a life force. It like really will help to regulate your nervous system. It will help you to feel stronger and healthier and happier. I mean, given that the water is not polluted, which is like a major issue these days. And has been for a long time, but anyways, I'm rambling about how cool water is, but like it's such a powerful
what is
element.
So fascinating is that's like every time you ramble about water, you're like, I'm rambling, or like, I'm boring people with my surf or my wave science, and that's like what everybody loves the most about this podcast. So this like running podcast might become a surf podcast.
No way. But, are you sure? Are you sure you want to hear about surfing instead of running, everybody? Like that's wild.
Well, maybe we can keep it both. But a lot of people, I think a lot of the people who listen to this, which by the way, thank you.
Thank you, listeners.
Hear a lot about running, so I think it's cool to bring something else into, and a lot of these things that we talk about today can apply to running, but I want to keep it moving because we've been going for an hour already. And some cool questions that, I always wonder, and I think you and I have had to figure out together is just like what, you're a waterman first, but you've always loved running in the same way that, or in a similar way that I have. And just like, what is your relationship with running, and how has that changed, especially now that you're married to me, who's like, running is my life, you know? And, you know,
Yeah.
it's like water is like, or running is like my life force, you know? I need it in a way that's kind of crazy. And, you know, and it has changed, and we've had to navigate that together.
Yeah. No, it's definitely crazy how much you love running. Yeah. And you know, like running has always been a part of my life too. I would say like, well, I maybe I shouldn't say always. Like I've never, as a little kid, I wasn't necessarily like running distance, but I did love to run. I loved to like run around and play soccer, and like I was, I always loved that kind of stuff. And playing tag, you know, and I was decent at running, but like I always treated, you know, I always kind of treated running as like, uh, you know, something that was fun to do. And as I started like getting more into it, I found that I wasn't that good at it, like for distance running. So, but I always loved to do it, and I always found value in it. And you know, honestly, like one of the reasons why I loved it is maybe because like given my family background, I was like, what would be like a super valuable skill to have in the event of like a zombie apocalypse? Like, oh, I could run 15 miles to the next town. That would be a very valuable skill, you know? And so that's honestly part of the reason why I started like trying to run. But um, no, running has always been kind of like a fun thing. And, you know, I loved running through the forest, and I loved getting to run with my friends, like in cross country and in track. Me and my buddy Mike Rogerson, we basically like both ran together. We're like two of the most renegade like runners in our school. Basically, like you know, some pretty funny guys that were always trying to like break the rules, and but also like love to run for some reason, which was kind of an oxymoron. Like most of the runners were like pretty like straight edge, I feel. Um, that being said, like I don't know, I've always loved it. It's always made me feel good. I've always like thought of it as a thing that is just, you know, I can use to become stronger and better mentally and physically. And that's always been the case. Like if you come back after a big run and you feel like, you know, you accomplished something, and you don't have as much of this chaotic energy anymore. Maybe you're like more like evened out. So
That's what I love it for.
yeah. Yeah, and you know, you running is your job. And at first it took me a while to admit that like, you know, it's a real job, because I only have ever done it for fun. But like you treat running as a job, as a profession. That means you have to put it first, like whether you want to or not that day. And you have to put it first even if your best friend is having a big birthday rager. If you have a big run the next day, you can't stay out and rage. You have to like have your one drink, or like one, you know, virgin pina colada, and then go to sleep, because you know it's number one for you, which is it's a big deal. Like, you know, I used to think of it as like, oh well, you get to run, like it's super fun, and you get to do that as your job, like score. But also at the same time, like it means you can't do other things, and it is a job. So like I really respect that you're able to stay super consistent for so long, because it's like such a long journey to become uh, really really good at ultra running. Like that's a really long
I
effort
know
that you have to do.
you've seen it day in day out of virgin pina coladas and 9 p.m. bedtimes.
Yeah. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah. Has it changed, you know, seeing me do my thing? Has it changed your relationship and perception of your own running?
I think I've gotten way smarter with how I'm doing it, and I'll choose objectives more rather than just like randomly going out. Like, oh, I'm gonna go out for a little while. I'll be out for maybe an hour, maybe 4 hours. Like, I don't know. It's kind of like whatever I end up finding out there is like I enjoy, which is still fun. Don't get me wrong. I love being like spontaneous and not working towards a goal necessarily. It's kind of like meditative to live in that moment like that. But I definitely think harder about like, all right, well, I'm not going to run this random 20 miles on the cement and give myself plantar fasciitis because I have other objectives that I want to meet. And you've helped me learn how to do that effectively. So thank you.
You're welcome. Well, that was super fun.
Yay, thanks. That's cool.
Yeah,
Thank you for interviewing me.
I feel like I could do that for like another hour, but I feel like we should get on to some listener questions.
Yeah, listener questions. Okay, let's go. That sounds cool.
Okay, so this is one that we've gotten every week that I've asked this, but I was waiting till we did this, is like how we got together in high school, and I think you should tell the story.
Ooh, baby.
Or I'll interject if I feel it's necessary.
Wow, wow. Back in high school. Yeah, well, it was really fun. So basically like you and I on our way back from a fated track meet.
But it started before that. It started when I think were talking to me on the bleachers when I was reading my book.
Yeah. Yeah, so we ran track together, and I ran distance slowly. Kat ran distance like pretty well, but all of that was like, kind of like that was just like extra information that wasn't really even like, I don't think either of us really like was thinking about that when we were on the bleachers waiting for the different track events to go on, and Kat was reading this book. What book was it again?
It was Game of Thrones. I think it was like the first or second Game of Thrones, like before it was a show.
Nobody even knew about it. I just saw like kind of hot chick reading this huge book. I was like, oh man, that's intriguing. Like, she's hot and she looks kind of smart. And so I was like, we're just chatting. I don't remember. I thought I asked you what you were reading on the bus though.
Oh, was it on the bus? I remembered it on the bleachers. It might have been the bus. Okay, bus then. You remember this better than I do.
Yeah, so I was like, what are you reading? What are you reading about? And she's like, oh, I'm reading about war, sex, and dragons. And I was like, oh man, this chick is rad. Like, I want to get to know you more.
Yeah.
And
basically we were already like kind of friends, but
yeah, we were already friends. We already knew each other a little bit, but
yeah. But basically that's how it started. Driving back from a track meet, I was a little bit of a loner. I just was mostly obsessed with books, and Carson, whether out of pity or interest,
yeah, right.
Not
pity.
Start talking to the girl just reading. The rest was history.
But like, I was kind of a weirdo too. I'm not saying that you were a weirdo, but I was definitely a weirdo.
I was a weirdo.
People would, I'm deaf in one ear, which is like makes me a prime target for like, funny jokes to be played on me and stuff, in high school. And I was like always a little bit strange and awkward, but you didn't seem to notice. So, and I thought that you were cool. I noticed a
little bit, but I kind of liked it. I totally noticed that you were a little strange and awkward, but it was
that's
fun.
So cute. So anyways, by the end of the bus ride, we were kissing, and the rest is history.
So yes, now the question is answered, and I can stop blushing.
Yeah, that was like 2 weeks before the end of high school or something, or 3 weeks or something. So like,
Yeah.
you know, when we fell madly in love, and then when I graduated, we kind of like went our separate ways a little bit. We didn't label anything official at the end of high school, but we definitely
then
stayed friends.
Yeah, we just stayed really good friends until the good old pandemic brought us back together.
That good old pandemic. And like a pandemic to bring you back in with your lost lover.
Lost high
That's so
school
funny.
lover. I know.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So next, honest review of the Satisfy shoe.
Ooh, that's for you.
Yeah, that's for me. Honestly, I love it. These shoes aren't out yet, so I can't just like order them at will. So when they made only the sizes of the athletes, so I'm usually a size 9, and they made me a 9, and it was a half size too big. That's still, I like it so much that it didn't stop me from wearing it like in a bunch of runs. I think I've put, like for those 25 hours in the canyon, I wore the Satisfy shoes for 15 of those hours. So 3 of those big runs. And at the end of that, I was like, I don't think I can wear a shoe that's a little bit too big, but like something cool is that Satisfy buys me basically whatever shoe that I want to try it from a different brand. And so I've been just like buying a bunch of shoes to try them out. And I mean, like, I still, with all of these shoes, have been running in the Satisfy shoe because I love it. I have a 4-foot strike, so I really love the rocker in there. It's that's a pretty big deal. So it's not all hype. I'm really excited to try it in a half size smaller. I've gotten feedback from some of the other team members and my manager Logan that it fits a half size too big on them too. So something to remember when ordering it. But worth the hype. I think it's an amazing shoe, and I might be getting a pair that's an 8.5. If Jean-Marc can get it to me in time before I race next week. But I'm seriously considering racing in it, even though I haven't gotten to train in a shoe that fits. So that should answer the question, is that like, no bullshit, I am choosing to wear that shoe, even though I have, Satisfy is such a cool brand that they're buying me any other shoe that I want to try. But I'm like still trending towards that shoe. So not just hype. I'm really excited, and I'm really surprised at how much I like it too.
It's true. Behind the scenes, Kat tells me this stuff too. And I even tell her like, oh, well, I know you're hyped about this shoe right now, but give it a week, because sometimes you change your mind, and she has not changed her mind. So
yeah.
The shoe is good.
I'm super excited to run in it my size, because it's a little bit too big. I'm moving around in the shoe a lot, which is fine unless I'm on a steep downhill, and be like on that steep downhill, like I'm constantly trying to stabilize. So then my post tib gets a little sore from just like, moving around. But even still, like, I like it so much, so we'll see. I do hope I can get in 8.5 before next week. But yeah, so, and then the last question that we have is the favorite place. It's a 2-part question, one for each of us, is the favorite place I've ever run, and the favorite play, and your favorite wave that you've ever surfed. And yeah,
cool.
super cute.
I wonder who asked that. But
I can look it up. It's I was at first reading like the profile names of the people, and then or trying to pronounce the names, but it's kind of tough to do that, because some of them are like such long names that are hard to pronounce.
These aren't bots, are they? They're not like XY24869.
No, one had like a kind of a funny name though. It was like this guy. But anyway, so what is your favorite wave that you've ever surfed?
Favorite wave I ever surfed? Oh man, that is like a really good question. There's so many different waves that are really fun in different ways. Jeez, and I've surfed like thousands of waves. That's really hard to say.
And that's so funny, because you don't want to blow up a spot.
Yeah, well, there's certain places that it's like, there's like a secret spot that I can't like necessarily tell you where it is, but I'll just tell you it's a secret spot. Um, or
Cool.
or there's more well-known spots like Pipeline or like Sunset Beach, but man, I've had such like so many really fun waves all over the place. I'd say, yeah, probably a secret spot on the Big Island.
Nice. Can you tell
Or,
me
or,
about what
or
the
was it
wave
on
was?
Oahu? I can't remember. It was a secret spot. It was a really big wave, and I feel like I surfed it really well. So
Nice.
yeah,
Cool.
it's
Can you
just like
tell
one
me
of those
what?
things. Like you're harnessing so
Yeah.
much power if you get to like ride a giant wave.
How
It's
big do you think it was?
Well, it's not only like how tall it was, but like how much power is behind the wave. Because some waves don't jack up that tall, but like some of them are really wide, or like the way that they break, it like releases a lot of power all at once. Um, and that's like Pipeline, like it goes from deep to shallow so fast, and it unleashes a ton of power. That's why it throws over so much water and it throws a barrel. So like what what's really cool though is like how all these water molecules are magnetic. They're all like clinging together. Uh, all of this power moving through this magnetic material, which is water, it makes it so that you know from going from like 1,000 to 2,000 kilojoules of power, it's like double the power, but it can make it can feel enormously bigger, or enormously larger, as far as like the power of the wave. So, if a wave is powerful, it it gets it's like such a thrill ride to ride a big wave. I think big wave surfing is some of my favorite.
Yeah. Cool.
But anyways, I just told you a lot, while also telling you just a little bit.
I know. Well, you talk more about waves, and that's what the people want. So,
Cool, yeah. I'll tell you all about waves all day, every
yeah,
day.
save it for another day, though.
What was your favorite run?
I mean, I love. I mean, I don't know if I want to blow up the spot, but I guess like Des Linden already blew it up a little bit because she ran on it, and I guess people know his Mono Road on the Big Island, where we did a lot of our training in high school. It's like the most special place in the world for me. If I could choose one place to run every day of my life, that might be it. It just, it's every run is a good run there, even
It's
when it
such a
sucks.
such a beautiful place.
And we have much history there too, which is really cool and special. And I've run so many miles on Mana. And other than Mana, I think the Grand Canyon. I love it so much. I have so much fun there. I love the desert. I love the type of terrain. It's like not technical, but a little bit technical. So it's really fun. You can rip it. And then just the contrast between like the canyon and the water of the Colorado River is just like unlike anything. So I think those are my two favorite.
Yeah, that's so cool. I mean, running is a little different than surfing when it comes to like sharing a location, I think, because there's only so many waves that run through. Like
Yeah, that's
the
true.
road will be there all day, every day. But
Yeah,
the
but it's
wave,
not the same if there's 100 people on it.
that's true. Yeah. Good point.
Part of what's
Good
special
point.
about Mana is like I'm out there by myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially when
pretty-
not the first couple miles usually, but if I run past 3 miles, and I usually
Yeah,
don't see anybody.
It's nice and remote.
Yeah.
But
All right. Any
well,
last words?
I don't know. We love you guys. Thanks for all your questions and for following along.
Yeah, keep following along. Please support the podcast by sharing with a friend, liking, subscribing, 5 stars, bada bing, bada boom, all that jazz. It's
Bada bing,
little
bada boom.
bada bing,
Yeah, you
bada
can just
boom.
go ahead and subscribe. Like, so easy. Just click that button. Ain't no thing,
Yeah.
chicken wang.
Ain't no thing. And it's honestly, it helps so much, and we really want to keep doing this, and it's really fun for us. And yeah, thanks for everybody who's told me that they like what we're doing. So it's valid, because some days I'm like, should we keep doing this? And then somebody will tell me that they really like the podcast, and I'm like, okay, it's worth it. So thanks, guys.
All right, have a good one. Aloha.
Aloha.
Yo.